The coming Czech elections, taking place this weekend, are a good prism through which to explore populism in another of the Visegrad states. The sudden rise of the billionaire business tycoon Andrej Babiš and his ANO movement in 2013, and the likelihood of his victory come Sunday have all been cause for the media to discuss the so-called Czech Trump, the potential danger the EU faces with his impending ascension, as well as democratic checks and balances falling into disarray. It's tempting to see the Central and Eastern European states as a distinct bloc, a homogeneous mass that falls prey to the same political sensibilities. This would be an oversimplification though, and comparisons to Viktor Orban of Hungary or Kaczynski's Law and Justice in Poland would be missing the mark quite considerably, let alone other radical right trends to the west of the continent. Some things to quickly bear in mind in relation to Poland and Hungary, the two states that are often seen as benchmarks for the Czech Republic's current political situation. Unlike Poland and Hungary, far-right parties have had little success. There is no Jobbik equivalent in the Czech Republic, and there haven't been major disruptions to the political landscape until relatively recently. Czech politics up until 2013 has been content with the centre-right and the centre-left trading power. Moreover, radical right populism has had reduced scope for mobilisation. There are no Czech border disputes, such as were fomented in Hungary post the Treaty of Trianon. The Czech Republic's borders have remained relatively stable, the country enclosed by the Ora Mountains for the past 1,000 years. Moreover, absent of a former empire, there is no past glory narrative to draw from, unlike Poland. Also, the spectre of communism is nowhere near as prevalent in the consciousness of the populace. The centre-left party, unlike in Poland and Hungary, isn't a reformed communist party, but instead a new political outfit entirely. The communists still exist, of course, but they have a designated party that consistently scores over 10% in elections, always blocked from entering government, I might add. Next, there is no strong Catholic or religious bloc for an ideologically driven religious right. There is no states-church connection in the Czech Republic, unlike, say, Hungary or Poland again. A Eurobarometer poll from 2010 revealed that only 16% of Czechs believe in God. Now, there is the Christian and Democratic Union that has traditionally been kingmaker in elections, but they rarely garner over 10% of the vote. Point is, issues like abortion and homosexuality, mainstays of the right in the other Visegrad states, aren't pressing in the Czech Republic. And lastly, issues of immigration and the EU are not contentious wedge issues. There is a broad agreement amongst all governing parties that severe restrictions on immigration are a good thing, and a soft Euroscepticism is present throughout every rung of the political system, curtailing the ability of right-wing populists to carve a niche of their own. This, of course, is not to say that there is no populism in the Czech Republic. However, it is important to bear in mind that populism is a political style and not a political substance. The Czech Republic is hardly without that. The three parties that have been of recent political significance are Public Affairs, who burst onto the scene in 2010, the sudden rise of Tomio Okamora's parties, Dawn and Direct Democracy, and of course the ANO, fronted by the infamous Andrej Babiš. Also, outside of party politics, is the Czech president Miloš Zeman, a populist leader in his own right. What unites these three political parties is their emphasis on corruption and wishing to displace a crooked elite. Public Affairs was a short-lived party that made sudden gains in 2010, obtaining over 10% of the vote, and hastily propelled into a coalition government. Its leader, Radek John, emphasized anti-corruption, referred to the political elite as dinosaurs, and aimed for the increased democratization of Czech politics through direct democracy. All party members were able to vote directly on party policy. The government they entered in 2010 was led by the centre-right ODS, led by Prime Minister Petra Nečas, and then suddenly brought down in 2013 amid serious corruption scandals that, at the time, were predicted to usher in a crisis similar to Italy's Mani Pulite inquiry of the early 90s. Implicated in the scandal was the Public Affairs' own Minister of Transport. The party was thus disbanded and disgraced. The subsequent elections in 2013 brought about a dramatic change to the political landscape thanks to two figures. Tomio Okamura is perhaps the closest the Czech Republic has to a Western-style radical right populist. He's been careful to avoid associations between himself and other leaders of the right in the Central and Eastern European states. Instead, he looks to the West and allies himself with Marine Le Pen, Frauke Petry and Geert Wilders, among other well-known political actors. Of both Slovak and Japanese ancestry, he's an unlikely candidate. Gaining fame through television appearances in the Czech version of British TV show Dragon's Den, as well as being a businessman and author, he has made himself into a popular figure throughout the country and rated as one of the most, if not the most, trustworthy politician. He has a strong social media presence and frequently posts on Instagram personal pictures, building a strong cult of personality. His former party, Dawn, gained 7% of the vote in the 2013 elections and joined the opposition. His platform at this point, buoyed by the collapse of the last government, was direct democracy, anti-corruption, reducing the scope of the European Union's control, and Islam. The latter two would subsequently gain greater importance for him later on. Okamura left Dawn in 2015, following which the party fell in support, and heading into the election are irrelevant. Replacing them is Okamura's new party, the Party of Freedom and Direct Democracy, who are currently set to receive just under 10% of the vote. He's accomplished this through increasingly commenting on the issue of immigration since the migrant crisis, and the threat of a more federalist European Union and monetary union. The Czech Republic, despite the process being underway, is yet to accept the euro. Okamura aims to delay or halt this process entirely. Similar to the aforementioned public affairs, Okamura wishes for a more direct form of democracy in the country, and advocates a system of referendums, similar to that of Switzerland. The party manifesto in 2015 read, "Our movement of freedom and direct democracy advocates as the only parliamentary party the change of our political system towards direct democracy, the direct and enforceable responsibility of politicians. We promote the direct choice and appeal of politicians and judges, as well as their personal, material and criminal liability. We are also pushing for a broad law on referenda, so that citizens can decide on their future in crucial matters." Right now, the party has few friends and has sought a wholly vote-seeking strategy. This has aided the party in the sense that it can make grand promises without the burden of having to follow through in government, which will likely protect it from the pitfalls experienced by public affairs. The big players in Czech politics have scoffed at the possibility of forming a coalition with them, although Okamura has curried the favour of President Miloš Zeman, who shares considerable ideological overlap with him. And now we come to the man of the moment. Andrej Babiš is a multi-billionaire businessman come politician who, on a populist platform of anti-corruption, has shaken up the political establishment and made waves in Western media. Comparisons to Trump or Orban or Kaczynski are difficult to ignore, but really, the situation is far more nuanced than that. Babiš is not a right-wing populist. In fact, he's more of a centrist technocrat who takes a managerial tact with politics. His promise to run the Czech Republic like a family business speaks to this. Of course, there's a flip side. Using his vast wealth, Babiš has bought up the publishing company of the country's two most widely read newspapers, giving him the ability to mould public opinion. Indeed, this year he was secretly recorded collaborating with journalists to orchestrate attacks on political opponents. Moreover, he's expressed his preference for the abandoning of proportional representation and the adoption of a British-style first-past-the-post system, which would offer the governing party considerably more power without the need to appease coalition partners. Does this mean we're seeing a Viktor Orban-esque birthing of an illiberal democracy? After all, Babiš has even stated in an offhand remark to the Hungarian ambassador that he supports Orban's power consolidation. That was unwittingly caught on television. Well, in short, likely not. Babiš is not an ideologue. He's not motivated by the perceived rampant communism still extant in the Czech Republic as Orban does Hungary. He's not interested in protecting a religious vision of the nation-state, as both Fidesz and Law and Justice do. He may have gripes with immigration and a critical attitude to the EU, but so what? The Czech Republic is the most distrusting nation of the EU within the EU, and Babiš here is simply reflecting broader trends within Czech society that have been constituent parts of the mainstream since accession talks. Ideologically, Babiš isn't new. Nor is he new politically, at least not in this election anyway. The 2013 elections that saw the rise of Tomio Okamura were overshadowed by Babiš's new party, the ANO, which stands for Action of Dissatisfied Citizens and whose acronym literally reads YES in Czech, which was catapulted into a governing coalition in 2013, obtaining a whopping 18.65% of the vote. Babiš became Deputy Prime Minister seemingly out of nowhere. Of course, context is king, and this becomes easier to understand when we examine the conditions. We've already mentioned public affairs that managed to suddenly enter government on an anti-government platform, but then were themselves smashed into pieces by a new corruption scandal that threatened the entire political integrity of the country. Indeed, about the time of the 2013 elections, the country was being run by President Zeman's caretaker government. Babiš essentially picked up where public affairs left off and ran with it. Meanwhile, the traditional centre-right collapsed knee-deep in the mud. The Social Democratic Party did okay, but much worse than expected, and were forced to enter into reluctant coalition with Babiš. What's strange about Babiš, though, is that he himself is hardly a squeaky clean candidate. Indeed, allegations that he served as an informant for the communists run amok. This allegation was thought to have been put to rest, but recently the case has been reopened, and Babiš is under increased scrutiny. As of yet, this has had little effect on his overall popularity, which is in stark contrast to Hungary. When centre-left Prime Minister Peter Medgyessy was outed as a former communist informant, his ratings plummeted. This again emphasises the differing political cultures of the two states. Ideological divides are nowhere near as rigid here, and communism and the debates that come with it are isolated to the Czech Communist Party, who, by the way, made significant gains in the 2013 elections, scoring near 15%. Financially, Babiš has been caught misusing EU grants to aid his own business interests in what became known as the Stork Nest case, and eventually left government earlier this year, under increased pressure from a feigned resignation by the Prime Minister Sobotka. This still hasn't hindered Babiš, who's been able to frame the controversies as a backlash from a corrupt establishment attempting to reinforce its own hegemony. So, what can we expect? Babiš will secure the most votes by a considerable margin. Coalitions will be hard to come by, though. Babiš has, in keeping with Czech tradition, refused to work with the Communists and Okamura's Direct Democracy Party. The Social Democratic Party have fallen in the polls considerably, but apart from the Communist Party, seem to be the only other party set to gain over 10% of the vote. The centre-right is still in tatters from 2013. In all likelihood, we'll see a repeat of the present coalition, only with Babiš at the helm. President Zeman has vowed to swear in Babiš as Prime Minister regardless of the outcome of the numerous legal investigations taking place against him. As for broader concerns like the EU, little will change. The adoption of the euro will be put on the backseat and delayed. Disagreements with the EU over migrant quotas likely will also continue, but these have largely been the domain of President Zeman, who has been far more forthright in criticising things like Islam and migration than Babiš ever has. In terms of ideology, this election is not a U-turn nor an upsurge for the Czech Republic. It's a debate over very domestic issues of economy, taxation and corruption, as the Czech people reject the old political guard for a new one, whether that be a desirable alternative or not. Thanks a lot for watching this video. If you liked the video, don't forget to click like and please do subscribe if you haven't already. If you didn't, click dislike and leave a comment and tell me where I went wrong. Huge thank you as always to my patrons. It's thanks to you guys that these videos are regular. As always, if it's within your means to do so, please consider becoming a patron yourself if you like what I do. Thanks a lot guys, and until next time.